What if I told you that one of the greatest empires in human history simply vanished overnight, not conquered by a superior army, not burned to the ground by a vengeful invader, not erased by a cataclysmic war? It disappeared with a single letter, one document, sent quietly to every embassy in the world. And just like that, 3,000 years of identity were rewritten. No battle, no invasion, no blood in the streets, just ink on paper. And a name that the world had known for centuries, a name that made the ancient world tremble, was gone. This is the story of Persia, an empire so vast, so ancient, so powerful that it once governed nearly half the human race. An empire that produced Cyrus the Great, Darius and Xerxes. An empire that stretched from the Nile to the Indus. And yet, today, it does not exist on any map. Instead, you will find a country called Iran. So what really happened? Was it a betrayal of history, a political calculation, or a desperate attempt to escape a shadow that had grown too dark to bear? The answer is far more complex and far more dangerous than you realize. Because this is not just a story about a name change. This is a story about a silent war for the soul of a civilization. But before we dive into this forgotten chapter of history, make sure you subscribe to the channel and leave us a comment below. Tell us, which other lost empires do you want us to investigate? Because we are just getting started. To understand why Persia disappeared, we first need to understand what Persia actually was. And for that, we need to go back. Far back. Long before the name Persia meant anything to anyone. Imagine the Iranian plateau, a vast, dramatic landscape of towering mountains, scorching deserts, and ancient trade routes. A crossroads between East and West where civilizations collided, merged, and were reborn for thousands of years. It was here, in the second millennium before Christ, that a group of nomadic peoples arrived from the north. They spoke Indo-European languages, distant relatives of Latin, Greek, and even modern English. They were not Arabs. They were not Semitic. They were something older, something distinct. They called themselves the Aryans, the noble ones. And the land they settled? They called it Aryanem Vaidya, the cradle of the Aryans. Over centuries, two of these peoples rose above the rest, the Medes in the northwest, and the Persians in the south, in a fertile region called Pars, or Fars. At first, the Persians were the lesser power. The Medes dominated. The Medes built the first great empire of the region, and the Persians, they watched, they waited, they learned. But history has a way of surprising everyone. In the 6th century before Christ, a man was born who would change the world forever. His name was Kurosh. The world would come to know him as Cyrus the Great, and what Cyrus did was unlike anything the ancient world had ever seen. He did not just conquer, he liberated. When he defeated the Medes, he did not destroy them, he absorbed them. When he conquered Babylon, one of the most powerful cities on earth, he did not burn it. He walked in peacefully, respected its gods, and declared himself the chosen king of Marduk, the Babylonian deity. For the Jews exiled in Babylon, Cyrus was not an invader. He was a messiah. He freed them. He allowed them to return to their homeland. He is the only non-Jewish figure in the entire Hebrew Bible to be called the Anointed One of God. Think about that for a moment. A Persian king, celebrated as a divine liberator by the Jewish people over 2,500 years ago. Under Cyrus and his successors, especially Darius the Great, the Persian Empire became the largest empire the world had ever seen. It stretched across 3 continents. It governed over 40 million people. It built roads that connected thousands of miles of territory. It created a postal system so fast it astonished the ancient world. Historian Lloyd Llewellyn-Jones called it without hesitation the world's first superpower, and at the heart of it all was a name that echoed across deserts and mountains and seas. Persia. But no empire lasts forever. In 334 before Christ, a young Macedonian king crossed into Asia with a relatively small but ferociously disciplined army. He was not yet 30 years old. His name was Alexander, and in just a few years, he did what no one thought possible. He destroyed the Persian Empire. In 3 decisive battles, Granicus, Issus, and Gaugamela, Alexander shattered the Achaemenid dynasty. The Persian king Darius III fled, and then he died, betrayed by his own men. The greatest empire in the world had fallen. But here is where the story becomes extraordinary. Alexander did not erase Persia, he became it. He wore Persian robes, he married Persian princesses, he adopted Persian court rituals, he declared himself the legitimate successor of the Achaemenid kings. He preserved the Persian bureaucracy, he ruled from Persian palaces. His own generals were furious. They had come to destroy Persia, not become it. But Alexander understood something profound. You cannot rule what you do not respect. He died in 323 before Christ at the age of 32. His empire was divided. The central Persian region fell to the Seleucids, Greek rulers who tried to impose Hellenistic culture on an ancient civilization. It did not fully take, because Persia, as an idea, as an identity, as a soul, refused to die. Centuries passed, dynasties rose and fell, the Parthians, the Sassanids. Each one reclaimed the Persian legacy. Each one rebuilt what had been broken. Under the Sassanid Empire, Persia reached new heights. Zoroastrianism, the ancient Persian religion centered on the god Ahura Mazda, on light versus darkness, on truth versus lies, was restored as the state faith. Persian art, architecture, and science flourished once more. It felt like a resurrection. But in the 7th century, everything changed again. From the Arabian Peninsula, a new force was rising, moving with terrifying speed, fueled by a new faith, Islam. Within decades, Arab armies swept across the Middle East and shattered the Sassanid Empire. The last Persian king was murdered by his own subjects. The ancient fire temples were converted into mosques. Arabic became the language of religion, administration, and power. For many Persians, it felt like the end. But it was not. Because the Persian soul did something remarkable. It did not resist Islam. It absorbed it. It transformed it. It made it Persian. Persian poets wrote in Arabic script, but their words were unmistakably Persian. Persian scholars became the greatest scientists, philosophers, and mathematicians of the Islamic Golden Age. Persian administrators ran the caliphate from behind the scenes. The Arab conquerors had taken the land, but Persia had quietly taken their civilization. Over the following centuries, the region passed through Turkish dynasties, Mongol invasions, and local Persian rulers. Genghis Khan's armies swept through like a storm, leaving cities in ruins and rivers running red. And yet, Persia endured. Then came the Safavids, a dynasty that would leave a mark so deep it still defines the region today. In the 16th century, the Safavids unified the Iranian plateau under a single banner, Shi'a Islam. They imposed Twelver Shi'ism as the state religion, transforming the country into the spiritual and political heart of Shi'a Islam in the world. It was a radical, violent, and deeply consequential decision. It separated Iran permanently from the Sunni Ottoman Empire to the west. It created a distinct religious identity that survives to this day, and it planted the seeds of tensions that still shape the Middle East in the 21st century. Under the Safavids, the name Iran, derived from Aryanem, the ancient homeland of the Aryans, began to be used more consistently within the country itself. But to the outside world, the country was still Persia. That was about to change. The 20th century arrived, and with it, a man determined to drag his ancient country into the modern world by force if necessary. His name was Reza Shah Pahlavi. He had risen from poverty to become the most powerful man in Iran, a military officer, a modernizer, a nationalist, a man who admired the secular reforms of Ataturk in Turkey and wanted the same transformation for his own country. He built railways, he established universities, he modernized the army, he industrialized the economy. And in 1935, he did something that shocked the world. He sent a diplomatic circular to every foreign embassy. A simple, formal request. Stop calling our country Persia. From this point forward, call it Iran. In the West, there was confusion. Persia was a name loaded with romance and history. It evoked ancient empires, fine carpets, and mystical poetry. Why would anyone want to abandon that? But Reza Shah had a very specific reason. Persia, in the Western imagination, was a colonial label, a name given by the Greeks to describe a single province, Fars, and then applied to an entire civilization. It carried connotations of the exotic, the decadent, the backward. It was a name that belonged to the Orientalist fantasy of the West, not to the living, breathing nation that actually existed. Iran, on the other hand, was the name the people had always used for themselves. It connected them directly to their ancient Aryan roots. It projected strength, modernity, and sovereignty. It was not a rejection of history. It was a reclamation of it. But history did not stop there. In 1979, a revolution shook Iran to its foundations. The Shah was overthrown, the monarchy was abolished, and in its place rose something the world had never seen before: an Islamic republic. The revolution did not change the name. Iran remained Iran, but it transformed everything the name meant. Relations with the West collapsed, and Iran, the name that Reza Shah had chosen to project modernity, became associated in the Western mind with fundamentalism and conflict. Meanwhile, Persia, the name that had been officially abandoned, quietly became romantic again. Today, when people in the West say Persia, they think of ancient glory. When they say Iran, they think of geopolitics. Two names, one land, two completely different stories. So what does this tell us? It tells us that names are never just names. They are weapons, they are shields, they are mirrors. The name Persia was given by outsiders and carried the weight of their imagination. The name Iran was chosen by the people themselves and carried the weight of their own identity. And yet neither name fully captures the truth. Because the real story of Iran, of Persia, is not a story of names. It is a story of survival, of an ancient people who were conquered by Greeks, Arabs, Mongols, and Turks, and absorbed every single one of them. Of a civilization that was declared dead a dozen times and refused to stay buried. Persia did not disappear. It simply changed its name. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. If this story moved you, subscribe to the channel so you never miss another forgotten chapter of history. Leave a comment below and tell us, which lost empire should we explore next? See you in the next video.